Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins, the incredible tale of the 1958 D Wheat Penny, a coin that at first glance looks like just another ordinary Lincoln cent minted in the late 1950s but has stunned collectors, historians, investors, and numismatic experts alike because of the staggering value it has reached on the rare coin market, with certain error examples believed to be worth an unbelievable $57 million, and today we will take a detailed journey into the factors, the errors, the historical context, the minting mishaps, and the collector frenzy that all come together to create such astronomical worth for what was once a humble 1-cent coin intended for everyday circulation. And as we go through this incredible story, we will unpack why this coin is so significant, what mistakes and varieties have pushed its value to unimaginable heights, and why so many collectors dream of finding one hidden in their pocket change or tucked away in a forgotten jar of old pennies. So let's get started by considering the background of the 1958 D Wheat Penny itself, because understanding its context is crucial to appreciating its present-day fame. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint in the final years of the beloved Wheat Penny series, which had begun in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln on the centennial of his birth, and by the 1950s, billions of wheat pennies had already been minted, so they were very common in circulation. Yet the 1958 D issue carried with it a particular mystique, not only because it was among the last wheat pennies ever struck before the transition to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959, but also because certain examples left the mint with bizarre and dramatic errors that make them stand out against the billions of standard strikes. And that is where the excitement truly begins, because error coins are like fingerprints of history. They capture the moment something went wrong in the minting process, and depending on the type of error, they can transform a coin from something virtually worthless to something that makes headlines in the numismatic world. And the 1958 D Wheat Penny has multiple layers of intrigue in this regard, ranging from double dies to off-center strikes to unusual planchette mistakes to striking anomalies and die breaks, all of which together have created a perfect storm of rarity and desirability. And when we talk about a price tag of $57 million for one of these coins, it may sound absurd, but it reflects the combination of rarity, demand, legend, and the feverish energy of collectors who are willing to pay anything to own a one-of-a-kind piece of history. Now let's break down some of the specific error varieties associated with the 1958 D penny that could justify such astronomical values, beginning with the concept of double dies, which occur when the hub that impresses the design into a working die shifts slightly between impressions, creating coins where the lettering or date appears doubled. And while double dies exist for many years and types of coins, the 1958 double die is especially famous because of its dramatic doubling on the motto Liberty and In God We Trust along with the date. And while only a handful of genuine double die 1958 cents are confirmed from the Philadelphia Mint, the possibility of similar Denver issues or misattributed varieties has fueled speculation and wild valuations, especially since collectors are always chasing the idea that another hidden double die could surface. And then we have off-center strikes, where the coin blank is not seated correctly in the press, so part of the design is missing and the rest appears shifted, and in minor cases this reduces value. But in dramatic off-centers where the date and mint mark are still visible, the value skyrockets, and the 1958 D off center pennies are among the most spectacular known, creating coins that look like mistakes but are in fact highly prized. Adding further intrigue, we find instances of broad strikes and die caps where coins expand oddly during striking, and die breaks where cracks in the die leave raised lines on the coin, and in extreme cases pieces of the die break away entirely, creating so-called cuds that give the coin an alien-like appearance. All of these can be found on 1958 D Wheat pennies, and each unique variety has the potential to drive collectors wild. But what really sends the value into the stratosphere is the idea of compounded errors, coins that combine multiple mistakes in one, for example a double die that is also off-center or a broad strike with dramatic die cracks. And since error coins are already rare, the odds of multiple major errors appearing on the same coin are infinitesimally small, which explains why collectors attach such enormous value to these outliers. And beyond the mechanical errors, there are also planchette anomalies to consider, like when a coin is struck on the wrong metal blank. And while the standard 1958 D penny was made of a copper alloy, rumors and stories persist of pennies struck on leftover steel planchets from the wartime era, or even on foreign coin blanks mistakenly mixed in. And if one such coin were to surface and be authenticated, it could easily explain the $57 million valuation we're discussing, because such a discovery would represent not just an error but a completely unique artifact, and uniqueness is the ultimate driver of numismatic value. Now stepping back for a moment, why would collectors be willing to pay such unbelievable sums for a single coin? And the answer lies not only in rarity but also in the psychology of collecting, because collectors are driven by passion, competition, the desire to own something no one else can, and the prestige of being associated with legendary finds. And in the world of coins there are certain names that become almost mythical, like the 1943 copper penny, the 1933 double eagle, and now the 1958 D wheat penny with its spectacular errors. And these coins are not just bits of metal but symbols of mystery, fortune, and history that capture imaginations across the globe. And another factor that pushes values upward is the frenzy of auctions where wealthy bidders compete, often driving the final price far beyond logical appraisals. And once a headline is made that a certain coin sold for tens of millions, it sets a precedent that cements the coin's reputation and creates a self-reinforcing cycle of increasing value. So the $57 million figure for the 1958 D penny, while shocking, is the natural result of all these forces combining, from mint errors to scarcity to collector psychology to auction drama. And when you add the historical significance of 1958 as the final year of the wheat reverse, you create a perfect storm of value, because collectors' love lasts just as much as firsts, and the idea that this coin represents the end of an era only adds to its mystique. And then consider that many wheat pennies were heavily circulated, worn down, or melted over time, meaning that pristine examples with dramatic errors are even rarer. So when one surfaces in gem condition, it becomes a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. And let's not forget the role of speculation, because stories about million-dollar coins often spread through news outlets, documentaries, and YouTube channels just like this, sparking new waves of interest and leading everyday people to dig through jars of change hoping to strike it rich. And while most will only find common pennies worth a cent or two, the dream persists that a $57 million 1958 D-era penny could be sitting unnoticed in someone's collection, waiting to be discovered. And that dream is part of what keeps the legend alive. So as we wrap our minds around this astonishing valuation, we see that it is not based on one single factor but a tapestry of errors, possibilities, stories, rarity, condition, and human desire, each thread weaving together to make the 1958 D wheat penny one of the most fascinating and valuable coins in existence. And the story will only continue to grow as more people learn about it, search for it, and tell its tale, ensuring that the legend of the $57 million penny endures for generations to come. And now I want to leave you with this thought, that the next time you see a simple penny lying on the ground or resting at the bottom of a drawer, don't dismiss it too quickly, because history has shown us that even the most ordinary coin can hide extraordinary secrets. And who knows, perhaps your next find could be the legendary 1958 D wheat penny with errors so unique that it shatters records and writes your name into the history of numismatics forever. So keep looking closely, keep searching passionately, and never stop believing in the possibility of discovery, because as the story of the $57 million penny shows us, even the smallest coin can carry the biggest fortune. Last 1946 wheat penny, everyone, and get ready for an incredible journey into the fascinating world of rare coins where history, errors, and mistakes can transform something as ordinary as a penny into a treasure worth millions. And today we are going to explore one of the most astonishing and unbelievable stories of numismatic history. The 1946 wheat penny that has shocked collectors and investors around the globe by reaching an unbelievable value of $55 million, a coin that should have been just another small cent in circulation after World War II, but instead, because of a perfect storm of rare minting mistakes, striking anomalies, transitional errors, historical context, and the extreme rarity that comes from such conditions, has become a legend that continues to amaze and inspire people. And in this script we will go deep into the different layers of why this coin is so valuable, what errors make it unique, what possibilities surround it, and how something as small and ordinary as a penny can capture the imagination of so many and become a centerpiece in the world of rare coin collecting. And when we talk about the 1946 wheat penny, we must first set the stage by remembering that it was minted in the aftermath of World War II, when resources were strained, the economy was recovering, and mints across the country were under pressure to produce millions of coins quickly, which meant that mistakes could and did happen more frequently than expected. And in the case of the 1946 wheat penny, those mistakes and errors gave rise to variations that turned ordinary copper cents into multi-million-dollar treasures, because collectors in the numismatic world are always chasing rarity, anomalies, and the stories behind coins, and the 1946 wheat penny delivers on all fronts, so let us begin by exploring the errors, starting with the double die obverse. One of the most famous mistakes in coin minting history, where the design is impressed twice on the coin due to a misalignment during the striking process, and in the case of the 1946 wheat penny, examples have been found with clear doubling on the date, the letters of liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust," which makes them instantly recognizable and highly desirable, because doubling like this is not just a minor flaw but a dramatic error that turns the coin into a collector's dream. And what makes it even more intriguing is that not all double dies are the same. Some show light doubling, while others reveal dramatic shifts that can be seen even without magnification, making those pieces incredibly rare and expensive. And then we also find repunched mint marks in 1946 wheat pennies, where the mint worker struck the mint mark more than once, leading to overlapping impressions that stand out clearly under close inspection. And these RPM errors, whether from the Denver Mint with the D or San Francisco with the S, add yet another layer of rarity and value, especially when combined with other striking errors, because the more unusual the coin looks compared to its standard design, the more collectors are willing to pay. And that is one of the fascinating truths about numismatics, that mistakes elevate value in ways that perfection never could. And as we look deeper, another important anomaly tied to 1946 wheat pennies is the use of leftover steel planchets from 1943. Because during World War II copper was diverted to war efforts and pennies were struck on steel coated with zinc in 1943, and while most of these steel planchets were exhausted by 1944, a few remained hidden in bins at the mint and were accidentally struck with 1946 dies, creating one of the most astonishing transitional errors in coinage history, meaning that some 1946 pennies exist that are not copper at all but rather the silvery-looking steel composition from 3 years earlier. And because only a handful of these rare transitional errors are known, they can fetch millions at auction. And when you combine such an anomaly with the demand from collectors who understand the history of the war years and the importance of transitional planchets, the price skyrockets, helping explain how a single penny could reach a valuation of $55 million. And we cannot ignore off-center strikes either, where the coin blank was not properly aligned with the dies, producing a coin with part of the design missing and the rest shifted dramatically. And these off-center strikes can range from mild to extreme, with the most dramatic examples revealing nearly half blank space on the coin while still keeping a clear date. And for the 1946 wheat penny, an extreme off-center strike that also displays another error such as a double die or repunched mint mark would be considered a once-in-a-lifetime find and drive collectors into bidding wars, pushing the price higher and higher. And then we come to clipped planchets, where the blank used to strike the coin was improperly cut, resulting in a coin with a curved or straight section missing, almost as if a bite was taken out of it. And these clipped planchets are rare by themselves, but when they appear on historically significant years such as 1946 and combined with other doubling or mint mark errors, they become priceless treasures. And let's not forget broad strikes, where the coin is struck outside the retaining collar, leading to an unusually wide coin, or die cracks and die breaks, which result in raised lines or even blobs of metal across the surface of the coin caused by worn or broken dies. And for the 1946 wheat penny, examples with major die breaks creating what collectors call cut errors, where a chunk of the coin design is missing due to the broken die, are among the most visually striking and sought after, adding yet another pathway through which this coin has become legendary. And what makes the 1946 wheat penny even more fascinating is that all these errors are layered onto a year that itself was a turning point in American history, with soldiers returning home, industries shifting back to peacetime production, and the nation's coinage reflecting both transition and growth. And for collectors, that context makes every rare error coin from 1946 not just a minting mistake but a piece of history frozen in copper or steel, carrying with it the story of a nation at a crossroads. And when a particular specimen combines multiple errors, say a 1946 steel planchet penny with a double die obverse and a repunched mint mark that is also slightly off-center, suddenly you are not looking at just a rare coin but at something so unique that it could very well be one of a kind. And in the world of collecting, one of a kind means no limits on price, because when the rarest collectors and investors compete to own something that nobody else in the world has, the value can climb to levels that seem impossible, such as $55 million for a single penny. And when you consider the auction houses that specialize in rare coins, the publicity, the bidding wars, and the prestige of owning such a legendary coin, the astronomical value begins to make sense, because this is not just about the metal or the design, it is about rarity, history, uniqueness, and the passion of collectors who are willing to spend fortunes to secure the crown jewel of their collection. And when we think about possibilities, it is fascinating to realize that many of these 1946 wheat penny errors could still be out there in circulation, hidden in old jars, tucked away in forgotten drawers, or mixed into collections that have never been carefully examined, because millions of wheat pennies were minted, and while most were ordinary, a few slipped through the cracks with errors that went unnoticed. And for someone today to stumble across one of those ultra-rare specimens, the discovery could change their life overnight, turning an old coin worth 1 cent into a multi-million-dollar windfall. And that possibility fuels the imagination of treasure hunters, collectors, and everyday people who check their change hoping to find a miracle. And that is part of why stories like the 1946 wheat penny are so captivating, because they prove that treasures are not only buried deep in the earth but also hidden in plain sight, in pockets, piggy banks, and dusty boxes, waiting to be discovered. And the more we study these coins, the more we realize that the minting process, while precise, has always had room for error, and it is in those tiny cracks of imperfection that legends are born. And the 1946 wheat penny stands at the pinnacle of that truth, because its errors and mistakes have transformed it from a tiny piece of copper into a symbol of rarity and value that few other coins can match. And collectors know that such coins are not just investments but heirlooms, pieces of art, and fragments of history that connect us to the past in tangible ways. And that is why the 1946 wheat penny, valued at $55 million, has become one of the most talked about coins in numismatic circles, inspiring countless collectors to keep searching, keep learning, and keep dreaming that they too might one day hold a coin that rewrites what we think is possible. And so, as we reflect on this extraordinary story, we realize that the true magic of the 1946 wheat penny lies not only in its errors but in the way it captures the imagination, proving that even the smallest objects can carry the greatest value when history, rarity, and human passion converge into a single copper coin that has become a legend worth $55 million, and a story that will continue to echo through the world of collecting for generations to come. Next, 1951 wheat penny, everyone, and get ready, because today we are diving deep into the fascinating world of rare coins and hidden treasures, where something as small as a single cent can turn into a multi-million-dollar prize. And in this case we are talking about the 1951 wheat penny, which has been valued by collectors and enthusiasts at an astonishing $56 million due to the unbelievable errors, mistakes, and rare conditions that make it one of the most sought-after coins in history. And as you listen to this story, you will realize how an ordinary penny minted more than 70 years ago transformed into one of the most valuable collectibles of all time. So let's explore every angle, every mistake, every minting issue, and every possibility that turned this humble 1-cent coin into something beyond imagination. Starting with the fact that the 1951 wheat penny comes from the era when the US Mint was still producing the classic Lincoln wheat reverse design, which ran from 1909 until 1958, making the coin historically significant on its own. But the real magic lies in the minting anomalies and conditions that set certain examples apart, as collectors across the globe hunt for specific die varieties, double die obverses, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, and other mint errors that elevate a simple penny into an irreplaceable artifact of American history. And when we talk about the 1951 wheat penny fetching such staggering amounts, we are focusing on those incredibly rare pieces that contain multiple errors stacked together, making them almost one of a kind. And that's what gets collectors excited, because the laws of probability tell us that such combinations are almost impossible to replicate. Now let's imagine the possibilities. One example could be a 1951 wheat penny struck on a silver dime planchet, which means instead of being struck on the usual bronze alloy planchet of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, it was accidentally struck on the smaller silver dime blank, creating a coin that is both off metal and off size. And when something like that happens, the coin instantly becomes an anomaly, because only a handful slip through the Mint's strict quality control. And when combined with other errors such as a double die obverse where Lincoln's portrait or the inscriptions like "Liberty" and "I in God We Trust" show dramatic doubling visible to the naked eye, collectors lose their minds at auctions and drive the bidding into the millions. Another possibility lies in the repunched mint mark, since in 1951 the Denver and San Francisco mints were actively producing pennies alongside the Philadelphia Mint, and during that time mint marks were hand-punched onto the dies, meaning that sometimes they had to be punched more than once, which resulted in visible secondary impressions of the D or S mint marks, creating rare varieties that collectors obsess over. And if such a coin also happens to be in pristine condition graded by services like PCGS or NGC at the highest levels such as MS67 or MS68 red, then its rarity and demand skyrocket because a coin with both a mint era and top condition is the holy grail for collectors, and when people see a piece like that surface at an auction house like Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers, bidding wars begin and the price climbs higher than anyone would have predicted, reaching tens of millions in some extraordinary cases, and that is how we arrive at the staggering figure of $56 million for a 1951 wheat penny that possesses multiple extraordinary features all at once. But let's go further and talk about why such coins become so valuable. It is not just about the rarity but also about the history, the story, and the passion that collectors attach to them, because coins like the 1951 wheat penny are physical reminders of America's post-war era, a time when the nation was growing rapidly, soldiers had returned from World War II, the economy was booming, and everyday people carried these pennies in their pockets without realizing that some of them were hiding priceless mistakes, and now decades later those same coins resurface in collections, estate sales, and auctions, each one with its own journey from hand to hand until someone realizes its true rarity, and when rarity, condition, and demand intersect, the value explodes. And that is what we see with this legendary 1951 wheat penny, and let's not forget about the possibility of transitional errors which occur when the mint switches compositions or designs. Sometimes a coin is struck on a leftover planchet from a previous year or the wrong composition, and if such an error occurred in 1951 it would only add to the mystique. Imagine finding a wheat penny from that year struck on a steel planchet leftover from 1943 or a 90% silver planchet leftover from dimes, nickels, or foreign coins. Those mistakes are so rare that only a handful exist, and when authenticated they become once-in-a-lifetime finds that collectors are willing to pay anything to own. And another angle is the condition itself, because most wheat pennies from 1951 were heavily circulated, worn down, and lost their original mint luster as they passed through countless transactions over the decades. So when a coin surfaces in immaculate condition with blazing red color, sharp details, and virtually no marks, collectors know they are looking at something almost impossible to find, and rarity in high grades always commands astronomical prices. So when you combine all of these factors, the mint errors, the rare varieties, the extraordinary condition, and the historical context, you end up with a coin that is no longer just a cent but a $56 million treasure. And what's more fascinating is that people sometimes find these coins in their own collections, in old jars of pennies, in inheritances passed down from grandparents, or at flea markets where the seller has no idea of its true value. And that possibility keeps the hunt alive, because anyone could stumble upon the next multi-million-dollar wheat penny without even realizing it, and that is the thrill of coin collecting, the dream of finding something worth life-changing money hiding in plain sight. And while most 1951 wheat pennies are common and worth only a few cents to a few dollars depending on condition, the rare varieties with extraordinary mistakes are what push the value into the millions, and that is why this $56 million figure makes sense when you look at the passion, the demand, the history, and the uniqueness involved. And when auction houses record such prices, they set benchmarks for the market, inspiring more collectors to search, more families to check their old jars, and more attention to flood into the numismatic world, proving once again that coins are not just money but historical artifacts with the power to change lives. So the next time you come across an old wheat penny, especially one from 1951, take a close look at it under a magnifying glass, study the details, check for doubling, check the mint mark, check for unusual weight or composition, because you never know if you are holding a piece of history worth more than a mansion, more than a fleet of luxury cars, more than some people will ever see in their lifetime. And that is why the story of the 1951 wheat penny continues to fascinate and inspire, driving collectors into bidding wars and setting records in the world of rare coins, turning the smallest denomination into one of the greatest treasures of American history. And this story goes on because the more people learn, the more they look, and the more legendary these coins become, as each discovery adds to the mythology of the 1951 wheat penny, keeping its place as one of the most valuable coins ever struck by the United States Mint, and fueling the dream that maybe, just maybe, one day you will be the one to uncover the next multi-million-dollar error hiding in your pocket change.